Last year in Melbourne, the most damaging story of Jeff Kennett's premiership came to a head in a drama that was made for television.
Hello and welcome to the program. Tonight we had planned to bring you a story about poker machine king Bruce Matheson and a link with the Premier Geoffrey Kennett.
An expose on the Kennett family's share dealings was pulled by Channel 7 minutes before it was due to go to air.
However, we can't bring you that report because we have been instructed by senior management not to put the story to air.
Why do you believe the story was pulled?
To placate the Premier.
Who do we have here this morning? We have an intruder.
The episode was a graphic illustration of the political culture that's grown under Jeff Kennett's rule.
Is this for local ABC or is for that awful bloody program?
It's a culture that punishes criticism and dissent. In this culture, what the Premier says goes. The state is run like a business, and accountability and transparency are sacrificed in the interests of results.
What's the one who's doing the...
It would become the story of the year in Victoria, but the journalists suspected almost from the beginning it was a story Channel 7 wasn't keen to tell.
We were quite astonished at the resistance to us taking part in this story. It was made clear from the word go that it wasn't a welcome report to be done on the program, and enormous pressure was applied for it not to get to air.
The chairman and controlling shareholder of Channel 7 is the Perth businessman Kerry Stokes. His company, Australian Capital Equity, has enjoyed a lucrative relationship with the Kennett government. It began with an extraordinary deal during the privatisation of Victoria's power industry. This deal is a story in itself, and one that helps explain how the staff at Channel 7 would later view the saga of Today Tonight. The deal involved the privatisation of the research and development arm of Victoria's State Electricity Commission. It's known as the Herman Research Laboratory, or HRL. HRL had spent 5 years and more than $30 million of taxpayers' money developing a new way to make clean, cheap electricity from low-grade coal. Still in the experimental stage, the potential profits from this technology are huge.
What sort of returns are we talking about? Millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions?
It would be, if the technology is successful, as we obviously hope, it would be hundreds of millions of dollars, yes.
We're talking sales all over the world to many countries?
Sales all over the world, yes. Many countries would be involved in purchasing the technology.
There was no tender for the privatisation of HRL and its research. The deal was rushed through on the last day of the financial year in 1994, the details not disclosed. It was finalised by Premier Kennett, who signed the documentation himself.
We had to have it done by June 1994. There was some confusion, I guess, in terms of what was happening with the industry, and the Premier, when he heard that in fact that if those blockers, if you like, couldn't be cleared away, we might miss the deadline. I understand he freed up the system and made it happen at the time. So in effect, he facilitated the process.
As Kerry Stokes tells us, it began when the Premier rang personally inviting him to invest in Victoria. According to a glowing account by Mr Stokes in his company newsletter, the Premier said, "Just bring your money and come. If there's any red tape, we'll cut through it." It was a complicated deal, but amazingly, Mr Stokes recalled, after what seemed like a wave from Mr Kennett's magic wand, all the complexities disappeared.
I take it Kerry Stokes was extremely impressed by the Premier's role in this.
Yes, I've heard Kerry say that on a couple of occasions. I'm not quite sure why, but yes.
The attraction of the deal, apart from the potentially huge profits, was the fabulous tax benefits. Under a federal scheme to promote research and development, the money invested in the HRL research is refundable and tax deductible, hence the rush to complete the deal by the end of the financial year. Even if the project fails, the investment syndicate led by Mr Stokes' company will get back all of its money, plus a guaranteed return of between 20% and 30%. This scheme has since been abolished by the Federal Treasurer, who said it had more to do with tax minimisation than genuine research.
What do you see as the benefits of this particular privatisation?
The short-term benefits, it's enabled a technology that wouldn't otherwise be developed and be put in place.
What the investors had to pay the state for this gold mine has never been revealed. The government refused to release any details. It even changed the law to make privatisations in the power industry exempt from freedom of information. Shedding HRL meant the state was spared the cost of its research. But Four Corners has learned that apart from that saving, the taxpayer got virtually nothing from the deal. HRL was effectively given away. What the state got was a debenture, or corporate IOU, for $182 million. The catch is it's not payable for another 20 years, and it may never be paid at all. Amazing as it seems, that decision is up to the investors. They don't have to pay anything unless they judge the research to be a commercial success.
The problem is that we don't know how typical this is. There are hundreds and hundreds of deals and contracts being let every year.
Professor Ari Freiberg believes HRL illustrates serious concerns about the way this government does its deals.
I think there's an enormous culture of secrecy developing, and the exclusion of all others other than the contracting parties is a fundamental misunderstanding of government. So this mask, this shield of commercial confidentiality is all part of this process of excluding the public because governments think they know what is best. Secrecy is danger.
For Kerry Stokes and co, the HRL deal and Premier Kennett's role in it was a good story. He even suggested later to his staff at Channel 7 that they report it for Today Tonight.
The chairman was telling us how great he thought Jeff Kennett was to do business with. And it was suggested to us that we should do a story on this wonderful research and development project into brown coal that had just been purchased from the state government.
Today Tonight has identified a company listed on the Melbourne Stock Exchange as Sino Securities International.
It was a year or so after this that the Today Tonight team came across a very different story, the story of the Kennett family's shares.
The shares belong to my wife, and there is no requirement for the assets to be listed.
Tonight, we had planned to bring you a story about poker machine king Bruce Matheson and a link with the Premier Geoffrey Kennett. However, we can't bring you that report because we have been instructed by senior management not to put the story to air. We start tonight with the story of a former American Marine who used a... I felt the most enormous pressure building up in my head and pain, intense pain. In fact, as I was sitting there trying to read, it felt really like something had exploded in my head. I managed to get through to the end of the link and the pain was so intense I hit the floor. As John Mort reports, Mackay is now under investigation by health and immigration officials.
The collapse of presenter Jill Singer prompted a public furore. The story went to air the following night, unchanged. It was the highest rating program ever on Today Tonight.
In 1993, Premier Jeff Kennett touched down in the Chinese province of Guangdong to meet...
Premier Kennett denied that he'd pressured Channel 7 to pull the story. He never did sue. 7 Chairman Kerry Stokes says he knew nothing of the report until after it was pulled, but was later appalled at how his journalists had behaved.
Simple facts of the matter were, in regard to that particular item, is that those journalists didn't go through our corporate legal structure. When you're responsible for a company There are procedures in place, and ABC obviously have the same procedures. They chose to go to somebody outside of our corporate law department for advice, and we were appalled to find that a story criticising a Premier would possibly go to air without us having been made aware of any defamation responsibilities that would flow.
The journalist's accounts of how the story was legally vetted have been independently verified by Four Corners.
The story had been looked at by the Channel 7 lawyer, the lawyer they brought in from Cause, a barrister, another barrister, and then the person who's reputed to be Melbourne's finest defamation lawyer, that's Geoffrey Shirk QC.
By the end of last year, 7 journalists from the Today Tonight office in Melbourne had been informed their services were no longer required.
That particular group of people and that program failed to perform. We gave it a very long time.
Well, I think they just wanted all the people who'd been involved in it off the premises.
In the end, I suppose they decided that they wanted to take a different direction with the program, and we were not part of it.
For a politician to tame the media is a fairly attractive proposition. He's been quite brazen about doing that down here. It's worked profoundly in his favour. I think it's very difficult now to report anything that is even constructively critical of this Premier. He has them intimidated out there, and Channel 7 was certainly no exception.